Here's a funny thing. Here's a little bit of hopium copium. Okay. This is a Supreme Court decision in regards to an executive order about Trump. However, that's not the actual decision is not necessarily what I want to read. It's this. So this is a quote that this is the majority opinion, and I think that this opinion was 8-1. So every Supreme Court justice on the Supreme Court bench voted in favor of this opinion. In the dissenting opinion, the lone dissenter was Ketanji Jackson or Brown Jackson, who of course is the loudest and newest member of our Supreme Court, and Amy Coney Barrett, of all people. I think that's her name. I don't know. I can't remember her name. It's a weird name. Amy. We'll just call her Amy. Amy wrote this. And I actually was not suspecting that Amy wrote this when I first read it. We will not dwell on Justice Jackson's argument, which is at odds with more than 2 centuries worth of precedent, not to mention the Constitution itself. We observe only this. Justice Jackson decries imperial executive while embracing an imperial judiciary. So every Supreme Court justice agreed that the lower court was acting as an imperial, as with executive authority, and demanding that the government do things that it can't demand them to do, and overriding precedent for the last 2 decades or centuries of the country. And then Ketanji's just like, but you got to act with your heart, man. Sometimes you just got to act with your heart. And then Justice Amy was like, she got the fatigue. She got a little bit of fatigue and said, no, Miss Jackson, we are not going to completely rewrite the Constitution based on how you're feeling at this exact moment. Actually, there's another part to this. Let me pull it up real quick. I have it excerpted somewhere. I sent this to Hardin, which is why I have excerpts of it. Sorry, give me 1 second. Okay. No one disputes that the executive has a duty to follow the law, but the judiciary does not have unbridled authority to enforce this obligation. In fact, sometimes the law prohibits the judiciary from doing so. Observing the limits, she cites James Madison. Observing the limits on the judicial authority, including as relevant here, the boundaries of the Judiciary Act of 1789, is required by a judge's oath to follow the law. Justice Jackson skips over this part because analyzing the government statute involves boring legalese. Post at 3. So at some point, Miss Brown decides to complain about boring She's a Supreme Court justice. There should be no such thing as boring legalese to a Supreme Court justice. If you put down a 500-page tax court ruling in front of a Supreme Court justice, he should be like, oh boy, reading material for the next 2 hours. It's like, I can't wait to dive into this succulent meal of boring legalese. If you put that shit down from a Thomas Clarence, he'd be reading it in bed at night with his nice little nightcap on and his pajamas and shit, putting himself, but he wouldn't be able to go to sleep. It was to be a bad idea because he would just be so riveted by the tax court documents. He wouldn't be able to go to sleep. Miss Jackson, however, I ain't reading all that. she gets a court opinion and she's like, I ain't reading all that. That's nice. I'm glad for you though. We're sorry that happened. Whatever. So involves boring legalese. She seeks to answer a far more basic question of enormous practical significance. May a federal court in the United States of America order the executive to follow the law? In other words, is it unnecessary to consider whether Congress has constrained the judiciary? What matters is how the judiciary may constrain the executive. Justice Jackson would do well to heed her own admonition. That's a $1 million word there. Admonition. Everyone from the president on down is bound by the law. That goes for judges too. That is fucking crazy. I have never read anything so scalding directed at another Supreme Court, because they work together. It's like you have if you work in an office and you have 9 coworkers and you just sit down and like, God, you're so fucking shit at your job. You know that? Like, that's going to spike some tensions. And it's especially hard when you go to an office and you're all lifetime appointees. You're all going to be there for the rest of your fucking lives. And she's been there for less than like 2 years and you're already like, bitch, shut the fuck up. That's going to make things a little bit tense moving forward for the rest of your fucking life. That's just crazy. I just saw this. I couldn't even believe it. I thought it was fake. I had to look it up. And sure enough, it was a brand new opinion. I'm just like, holy shit. I've never read anything like this before, man. Anyways, your CEO does this all the time to your coworkers, and she's just so stupid. She's like, ha ha ha, yeah. I have a feeling that Miss Brown's or Miss Jackson's reaction to being told that she's fucking stupid is not like that. It's probably like this.
Me and my nigga beefing, I ain't going home tonight. We outside. He trying to trap a bitch. I ain't going.
What's funny is that there's another dissenting opinion that she wrote where she got absolutely fucking blasted by everybody else on the bench. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. It's another thing that I sent Harden, I think. Shit. I do have a save of it. I actually like physically saved the HTML file. Can this work? Here we go. Justice Jackson's misguided attack on written law. Actually, this wasn't even what I was looking for. Hold up. This one. Jackson Declaration of Independence. Okay, so the New Yorker wrote this. She issued a dissent where, again, everybody on the bench was like, are you like a fucking retard or something? And the media came out and said like, yes, Queen slay. This is Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's Declaration of Independence. She's no longer afraid to play nice with the conservatives. She's going to do her own thing and issue her own dissents, even if that means breaking with her liberal counterparts on the bench. Like, maybe she's just fucking wrong. Maybe if Sotomayor and the other bitch is like, are you retarded? Maybe she's just wrong. But no, the New Yorker is praising her. Yes, Queen. Dun, dun, dun. All sick of these Plan Bs. And it's just like, maybe she's unfit to be a Supreme Court justice. This was a response. The first thing I pulled up was a response to this saying, Justice Jackson's misguided attack on written law. The point is that in her dissent, she said something like, textualism is white people and racism and shit. Textualism is when you read the law and you interpret the law literally as it is written. Whereas the other one, I forget what it's called, is when you consider the context and you contextualize the law and you consider what they were going for and what was said outside of the law, like when they were discussing passing the bill and stuff. And she's like, we need to consider the context. You got to put this in the context to see that I'm right and shit. And it's like, no, you should enforce the law as it's written, is usually how the court handles things, but not always. Not always, chat, but generally you want to stick to the law as much as possible because the law, technically, supposedly, is the will of the people because Congress passes it and Congress represents the people, right? So therefore, what is passed into law is considered the will of the people, and that's why it should be interpreted literally. But unless you're Ketanji Brown Jackson, then you gotta consider the context of white supremacy and shit, man.
Thank you for watching this clip by Colonel J. This is the King of Bull here. Remember to like and subscribe. Juice!